Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to PNS, the Philosophy News Station. I'm Jofa. Today we'll be looking at the current situation facing politicians with the Syrian refugee crisis. As conflict continues, citizens of Syria are increasingly looking to the West for safety and stability. Over 100,000 refugees have already migrated to Europe in hopes of protection, and more are expected as the conflict rages on. U.S. President Barack Obama recently agreed to admit 10,000 Syrian refugees into the United States. But after the recent terrorist attacks in Paris, France, many policymakers have evoked security concerns as a reason to deny Syrian refugees. The fear of terrorists gaining access to the U.S. posing as refugees has forced many policymakers to review their decision to welcome the refugees. The debate for many comes down to security versus compassion. With the ever-present threat of terrorism, the recent attacks in Paris have highlighted the potential devastation that can occur. Policymakers on the side of denying Syrian refugees into the United States look at this potential and see a duty to the American people to prevent similar attacks, even at the cost of humanitarian compassion to non-citizens. On the other hand, policymakers who agree with accepting an increased number of Syrian refugees cite the need for compassion, even if that entails some security risk. The question then becomes, what is the right response? Well, at PNS, we let the philosophy answer the questions. By examining the question of whether it is right or wrong to deny Syrian refugees into the United States through the lens of prominent ethical philosophers, we can attempt to answer this question. In fact, our correspondents recently spoke with a few citizens and discussed the issue wearing that philosophical lens. Now let us check in with our first correspondent, Jack Jackerson, to get a feel for the situation.
Thank you, Hofa. Good evening. Tonight I have Corinne Laratanda with me.
Hello.
Now, Corinne, I'm sure you're fully aware of what's going on in Syria right now.
Oh, yes.
Yep, ISIS has invaded Syria, and that's causing the Syrians to want to flee to our country. And Barack Obama is encouraging Americans to let in the Syrians, 10 to 100,000 of them over the next few years. Do you think this is right? How do you feel about this particular situation?
I personally feel that we shouldn't be taking in refugees right now. Our country obviously has enough issues on its own, and we have problems with homeless people and certain poverty going on already, and I think adding these refugees in is just going to create even worse for our country, so I definitely don't think that we should be taking it right now. I feel sorry for them, and I do understand that this isn't a hard time, but I think other countries are more stable to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, that's a valid point. Have you heard of the ancient philosopher Aristotle?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I think that Aristotle would have a different view on the situation than you. He thinks that through achieving happiness, one needs to be virtuous, but they need to be virtuous at like a golden mean. They can't be deficient with their virtues, and they also can't be excessive.
What exactly is a virtue?
Well, a virtue is moral excellence of a human being.
Okay.
So,
if it's like that, what exactly does this have to do with the Syrian refugee policies?
So a person who, like yourself, who would not want the refugees to enter the country would be deficient with their virtues. Aristotle would think so. These people express their virtues, insensibility, illiberality, and pettiness.
Okay.
Aristotle would personally think that you guys are wrong on the situation because you are deficient with your virtues.
So if I'm deficient in my virtues, how can I correct that?
He would say that people who are for taking they want to take in the refugees, their virtues would be at the golden mean. They would show friendliness, liberality, magnanimity, and righteous indignation. And he would be on that side of the situation. He would think that that is the right they're in the right because they're not excessive or deficient with their virtues?
Wow, that's like a really good point. I would have never thought of it that way. I definitely think that this has changed my mind too.
So do you feel like after this conversation you would want to take in the refugees, or are you
I think
still?
that we have some room. We do.
Do you have some room?
There's an opportunity, so yes. I think we should.
Well, there you have it, Jofa. Live from Southern Texas, I'm Jared reporting for PNS News Channel.
Thanks, Jack. It seemed like Aristotle had some good ideas there. I just want to remind viewers that Aristotle also thought we should have a moral exemplar to base our decisions. And it leads me to wonder, are politicians also using a moral exemplar to base their decisions? Someone that does the right action for the right reason in the right situation? I wonder. Now I want to turn to Hank Arnold, one of our correspondents who's currently with a citizen who requested to remain anonymous. Let's go to him now.
Many U.S. representatives want to stop accepting Syrian refugees into the United States. Indiana Governor Mike Pence said he would block Syrian refugees from settling in his state. What is your take on the Syrian refugee? Do you think a policy to deny Syrian refugees is right?
I mean, the way I see it, if you let them into the country, it'll just cause terror in our country. Why risk it?
Here's where I'm going to have to disagree with you. It's obvious at this point, by my track record as an incredibly biased interviewer, that I'm a devout Kantian. My main man, Immanuel Kant, would say you shouldn't even be concerned about the outcome, just on the action of letting these individuals in. Any concerns you may have about the long-lasting repercussions of these actions are simply irrelevant. You can only be concerned with the present and what moral code you want to hold your immediate actions to.
I mean, that makes no sense. What about foresight? I mean, isn't it important to plan ahead for... I guess that makes sense.
Honestly, it's quite a freeing mentality.
Either way, they're not U.S. citizens. They don't belong here. I mean, it's my...
Wrong again. According to the autonomy formulation, or the kingdom of ends formulation, we are stripped from our current social and economic status, as well as our citizenships, heck, even our personhood. You must view it from the outside. Any rational being would legislate for all to harbor refugees, if they are divorced from the possibility of not being a refugee themselves, if for nothing more than the selfish fear of them being in that very same position.
I mean, that seems just pointless. I mean, I can see if I was a refugee why I'd want to be let in, but from the perspective of our lawmakers, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, what's the benefit? All they're going to do is leech off of our resources.
I agree with you there, but if you look at it from the perspective of Kant's humanity formulation, it comes to the opposite conclusion given the same initial conditions.
So, what's your point? I don't even know what that is.
You see, Kant argues that a being must be valued intrinsically, not instrumentally. The fact that there seems to be no economical or sociological benefit to allowing these refugees into our country, it implies that it's done out of valuing these people as an end, not a means.
So if you're saying if it benefits the person that's acting, they should just do it?
No. Just that it doesn't violate that specific formulation, the humanities formulation.
So let me get this straight. If there's no benefit, it would not be amoral to let them in? So you're saying that I should empathize with these people because if I was in that position, I would want them to let me in as well.
Yeah.
So you're saying because we can't comprehend the repercussions of our actions, that shouldn't even take part in our decision-making process?
Yeah, that's basically it.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Why am I... Screw this.
Well, you heard it here first, from PNS News. See you next time. Catch you back at the station, Jofa.
haven't seen anyone heated over Kant like that in years. For a philosopher like Kant, the only thing good in itself is the goodwill, and it shouldn't be desire or what we think is right that guides our decision, but our duty. And what is our duty, you may ask yourself? Well, it's our duty to reason. And that's where we get the categorical imperative that describes the necessary actions. Politicians can learn from this. Maybe it should be reason that guides our decision and not just reasons. Those formulations of the categorical imperative that Hank mentioned seem like they'd be great tools for politicians, or anyone in that matter, to base their decisions. And now let's go to our last correspondent and see where the conversation takes us.
Thanks, Jofa. I'm here right now with one of Grand Valley's own, Ricardo. Now, Ricardo, with over 30 states in America saying that refugees are not welcome, and numerous U.S. representatives voicing their opposition towards letting more refugees in, how do you feel towards the matter?
Well, with all that's going on in Syria and Iraq right now, and with the recent bombings on Paris, I don't really see a reason why we should let these people in.
Yes, I see your point. But let me stop you right there.
Mm-hmm.
See, this being PNS News, we're going to have to look at this from a different perspective. Let's say John Stuart Mills, for example. Now, then we might be able to figure out what action we should take. Now, as you may or may not know, Mill was an advocate for utilitarianism, which is basically finding the net benefit of happiness for all people from our actions.
Okay, but what does this Mill guy have to do with any of this?
So let me stop you right there. You see, utilitarianism is only concerned with the net outcome. Where utilitarianism would say you're wrong is that you chose to optimize the happiness of yourself and your safety over the possible happiness of the Syrians.
That's kind of dumb, because of course I choose my happiness over the happiness of a Syrian.
See, Mill would say that you're supposed to be unbiased towards happiness, and that you should only try to maximize it.
Right, okay, but even if I am unbiased, there's my safety versus their safety. Who's to say that their happiness would be greater than my safety?
See, well, saying that their safety is greater than yours is kind of a gray area, but the Syrian refugees would not only acquire happiness from safety, but they would also acquire it from many other high-quality pleasures.
High-quality pleasures? What do you mean?
You see, Mill says that happiness is achieved through pleasure, but he also makes the distinguish that there are high and low-quality pleasures. Now, low-quality pleasures are the ones like of the body and of the food and drink and things like that, while high-quality pleasures are the things that lead to human contentedness, flourishing, and well-being. And Mill says while low-quality pleasures aren't bad, we're only looking to maximize the high-quality ones.
Okay, but what does this have to do with the net benefit of happiness?
Well, that means that refugees would also gain happiness from high-quality pleasures like freedom, security, the rights, equality, opportunity. So once we add all these new happinesses from these high-quality pleasures, there's actually going to be a larger net benefit of happiness towards the Syrian side.
Okay. So what you're saying is that they have a larger potential of happiness than we do, and that's why we should let them in?
Yes, since we're only concerned with the net outcome, Mill would want us to try and pick the actions that are going to lead to the most happiness. So although you might lose some happiness in the form of being less secure, because they could be ISIS members, Mill would say that there are many different kinds of pleasures that the Syrians will achieve, and that overall that would outweigh your happiness from not being so secure.
Okay, but how do I know what's going to happen all the time? Sometimes you never know. We might let refugees in, and then they start attacking, bang, bang, boom, everybody dies, and then everybody's really upset about that, and then the net benefit would lead towards unhappiness.
See, I understand your point here. There's not always certainty in what we're going to do. And, well, this is more of a gray area. I will answer with the best of my ability. Now, Mill would say that the majority of our day-to-day actions, we know what's going to happen, right? Most times we know the outcome. But he would say that in the case that we don't know what's going to happen, we're going to have to do our best to rationally choose the most expected outcome. And in this case, since all the Syrians are being tested and reviewed and, really dug deep into their past to find out, if they can come to the United States as refugees, we can say that thoroughly and rationally that we can expect no attacks since they're being so thorough and letting them in.
Okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I think it's still impossible to be completely unbiased all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mill got over it, so I'm sure you will too.
Okay, but I do have one more thing to ask.
Sure.
How am I supposed to weigh the actions of happiness? How does one happiness outweigh another?
So that's just another one of those gray areas, and what do you know? That's all we have time for. So thanks for choosing PNS News, and Jofa, back to you.
Hey, I want answers, goddammit!
Hey everybody, this is Eric from PNS News. Just wanted to go over a few things, maybe clarify some stuff about the last reporter's discussion on utilitarianism. So the modern form of utilitarianism that he's talking about in that video is adapted by John Stuart Mill. He's an 1800 British philosopher. And the whole idea of utilitarianism is deciding what actions we should choose between and what actions we should do, and it's all based on the results or the outcome of the action. This is where it differs very highly from Kantian ethics, where we're not focused on the actions or the outcome of our actions in Kantian ethics, but here we are. So we're supposed to pick the action that's going to produce the net amount of happiness, the highest net amount of happiness gained here. And when I say net, I mean the most amount of happiness, not just our own, but the most amount of happiness of everyone around us produced by just this action. And this is another part here where we have to step in and say that we are supposed to be unbiased towards happiness. It's not, our happiness does not come before anybody else's. It's supposed to be just complete unbiased towards the net gain of happiness. So happiness, he says, is derived from different different pleasures, and he said you make a distinction between low and high quality pleasures. Low quality we're not concerned with here. They're not bad, but we're not concerned with them. So the high quality pleasures are the kinds of pleasures that lead to human flourishing, contentment, and well-being. Things like knowledge, freedom, friendship, safety, rights, equality, sympathy, love, loyalty, things like that. So he says that these the happiness that we get is derived from these high quality pleasures. So we're looking for basically, in retrospect, the net amount of high quality pleasures here. Now, some of the things that are kind of hard to understand with this, or some of the problems that are with this argument, it's very hard to be biased all the time, especially in situations where it's like us versus them, so yeah, it's very hard to be biased all the time. It's hard to always know what the outcomes of our actions will be, because that's basically what this is 100% based on, is what the outcome, the net benefit of happiness from our outcomes. It's not always possible to know what the outcomes of our actions are going to be. It's also hard to decide what pleasures outweigh others in terms of happiness. So for example, very quickly, if I have the pleasure of being safe and you have the pleasure of being free, where who's to say what one outweighs another, in determining which action we should take.
And there you have it, people. 3 different moral philosophers with 3 different methods to make moral decisions: Aristotle, Kant, and Mill. And now I'd like to also introduce another philosopher that would have another way of determining how to make moral decisions: John Rawls. It's John Rawls who said that we should make decisions from the original position under a veil of ignorance. And you may ask yourself, what is the original position, and what is this veil of ignorance you're talking about? Well, the original position is a hypothetical situation where we all come to the table to make decisions for how society will work. And the veil of ignorance is the idea that we should make these decisions with the understanding of who we are or our own social status. So things like our sex, race, age, socioeconomic status would be unknown to us when making these decisions. And it's this way that we make decisions that don't benefit a certain group of people. Because if we make decisions unaware of what our own status is, we may be those people that those decisions affect. And we don't want to make decisions that we would think would be unfair if they applied to us. So when deciding if we should allow or deny Syrian refugees, we should look at it from the original position and under the veil of ignorance. And this is what John Rawls refers to as justice is fairness. With the current issue concerning Syrian refugees and the decisions policymakers have to make, it seems like we have a number of moral philosophers that would have ways of making some of these moral decisions. But do policymakers have professional obligations to make decisions based on moral considerations? Well, I certainly hope so, because they make decisions that not only affect themselves, but in many cases, they make decisions that affect the world. That's why here at PNS News, we bring philosophy to the news. I'm Jofa. See you guys next time.